Hello and welcome to the Esri GeoDev webinar series. This webinar is a continuation of the series we created in the hopes of engaging in developer-related topics and discussions in between Dev Summits. We hope you get much or more out of it than you anticipated. Now, we would like to introduce you to today's webinar, Building ArcGIS Pro SDK Add-ins and Solution Configurations. I would like to introduce Chris Zen, Technical Product Manager, and Rob Burke, Instructor with Esri. Rob, let's get started.
Well, thanks a lot, Amy. Great. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Rob, and we'll go ahead and get going here. For our agenda, we've got a bit of an introduction to our SDK. Then we'll look at creating add-ins and solution configurations. And then we'll look at what's new and what's coming, and then take some of your questions. So please, at any time, enter some questions for us. All right, here we go. When customizing ArcGIS Pro, there are really three different strategies to go about it, and they go from the most simple to the most complex, where you might be just doing some configuring by creating tasks or customizing the ribbon or adding some commands up to the quick access toolbar. From there, you might get a little bit more detailed and build a model of a workflow. Or you might start writing a Python script where you can write some code to model your workflow and then run it through a script. And then what we're here for today is to look at extending ArcGIS Pro. And to do that, we're going to be using .NET and building add-ins and configurations. These two patterns of building add-ins and solution configurations are your way to extend Pro. So you might build a simple add-in, you might build a solution configuration. Let's take a look at an example here. I'm going to start up Pro, and I'm going to give an example of what is an add-in. So an add-in is really your way of adding some functionality to Pro. In this example, I have an add-in. There's an extra tab and an extra button over here so that that I can get to the extra functionality. So you would be creating new commands that don't already exist, and that's extending. If we go a step further, building a solution configuration is a little bit more than just extending. It's creating the startup experience. Like here, as I start up Pro, the splash screen is different. And as Pro gets going, the startup page, instead of selecting a project from a list, there's a nice map that somebody has created. So here I can click on San Diego and open the project that way. A solution configuration then is a way for you to customize the startup experience and include add-ins. So here's the add-in, it's still there. But look at the other tabs are gone. When Pro is starting up, you can configure those other tabs and either remove them or reorganize them. We have a full set of documentation that you can find at our ArcGIS Pro landing page. When you get to the landing page, there's installation instructions for you to get going. There's a full API reference. We've got a lot of samples out there that are posted on GitHub. You can download the collection of samples, and there's a lot of code there for you to get started with. And then, of course, we have the full set of documentation that's all online. At the bottom here, you'll see our dev labs. These are real short, 15-minute like instructions of how to get something done, like build an add-in or build a configuration. You might use these as your homework assignment for tonight or tomorrow as you get going here with add-ins. We've got a very active GeoNet group that you might consider joining and learning more about add-ins that way. Esri has a YouTube channel where you could search for videos about the SDK. There's a lot of them up there. And very active blog. A lot of Esri users have already been transitioning to Pro, and a lot of our developers are using the SDK to extend Pro. And I'm going to turn things over to Chris here so he can give you a couple of examples of what folks are doing out there.
Thanks, Rob. That was a really great intro. So over the past couple of years, we've seen great interest in adoption of ArcGIS Pro, and with it, the Pro SDK. Organizations are actively making or are planning their migration to Pro from ArcMap. We've seen longtime ArcMap user organizations build and release some excellent Pro add-ins to their teams over the past year. Also, Esri business partners have been making the move to Pro and are developing new add-in products, some of them based on long-standing ArcMap extensions. A couple examples of these are actually seen here. On the left from Xtools is Xtools AGP, which provides a new Pro version of their Xtools data management toolset. And on the right from EagleView is Pictometry for ArcGIS Pro, which integrates a custom pictometry imagery viewer with some unique navigation tools which sync with other map views. All right, and also we're seeing users create entirely new products on Pro, taking advantage of 3D and other new capabilities. On the left from Bergman Associates is Bergman Impact 3D, which allows urban planners the ability to assess the impacts of new construction on surrounding areas. And on the right from Mapillary is Mapillary for ArcGIS Pro, which allows users the ability to view and create features interactively in their Mapillary street-level imagery. So these are just two examples of organizations taking advantage of new functionality in Pro and building new add-ins. And again, we're also seeing many user organizations building exciting new add-ins and planning their migration to Pro this year. Thanks, Rob.
All right, great, excellent. Well, let's dig in here and look at creating an add-in. To get started, the first thing is get Visual Studio, either 2015 or 2017. I'm using the Community Edition today, but you could use Professional or Enterprise too. And install the SDK. Just in Visual Studio, you'll go to the Marketplace and do a search for ArcGIS Pro. You'll find our 2 SDK installations. After installing them, you'll be all ready to go. As you start building an add-in or a configuration, we have a couple of templates for you to get started. So as you create a new project, you'll be able to find the Pro add-in templates and then build either an add-in or a configuration. Whichever one you choose, all the files and folders needed get created in the project, and then you can go on and further customize them and add your unique functionality. We also have several templates for commands and other controls. You'll find these also while you're in Visual Studio, just right-clicking your project and adding new items, and you'll find the ArcGIS collection of add-in items right there. As you pick one of these, you'll get some code that's generated, and you can use in Visual Studio, you can use the DAML to configure the way the control looks and where it appears. Also, the process creates a class for you, and there's the click event all stubbed out and ready for you to add your unique code. Let's take a look at a demo here. I'm going to go ahead and start Visual Studio. As I get Visual Studio started, I want to take a look at the process so you know how to load in the SDK, how to install the SDK. So right here from Tools and Extensions, you'll do a search for ArcGIS Pro. And you can see I've already loaded in the 2 parts here, and I'm ready to go. So for now, I'm going to create a new project. And when I create a new project, you'll be able to, under Visual, either C# or Visual Basic, you'll be able to search for ArcGIS and then find the 2 templates here for creating these projects, either an add-in or configuration. I'm going to start by building an add-in, and we'll look at configurations later on. The add-in is getting created. The project is being put together. Lots of folders and files are coming together off to the right side over here. And it opens up to the DAML. And here in the demo, you can see some metadata about the add-in. And you can see that every add-in gets a unique GUID number when it's created. My add-in contains modules. And I've got one module in here called the Insert module. And this is where I can insert things into Pro. So I could insert new tabs. On a tab, I can create groups. And then within groups, I can add controls. And right now, I don't have anything added in here, but let's put one in. So I'll go over to the project. I'll go to add new item. And as I add a new item in here, I'll see, again, under Visual C#, I'll see the templates here for ArcGIS. And I'm going to create a button, but you can see, well, there's combo boxes, there's construction tools, regular map tools. I could have a gallery, like when you do the base maps, and you can see a gallery of items to select from. I'm going to go ahead and make a new button. And I'm going to just click Add here and add the new button in. You can see the C# file has been created. The code is stubbed out for me. The click event is already there. I've got just a little bit of code off to the side here that I want to paste in, just so that we have something to, something shows up when I click it. Let's see here, I want to resolve my message box and use one from the API here and resolve project also. All right, so I've got a little bit of code here in the onClick event. Now let's go ahead and do a test run. ArcGIS Pro is starting up, and during the compile process, the add-in got created. Pro looks for the add-in and then brings it in as part of the startup process. So here, as I open up a new project in Pro, I'll see that there's some extra functionality in there. And I'll see the add-in tab up at the top here. I'll see the add-in that I was showing off earlier that I had preloaded. But then here's the button that I just created. And when I click on it, it tells me the name of the project and the location of the project. That was my little bit of code that was in there. It doesn't do anything else. But this is the basic process of creating an add-in. We could look in the backstage area. There's the add-in manager where you can see the add-in that I've just created. You can see the custom identify tool that was loaded in earlier. And then under options, you can see some folders here that Pro will look into these folders to see if there are any add-ins already there. So as Pro starts up, it looks into these folders. If there are add-ins there, it loads them in. There's another folder, though, that it always looks in. This is where you can add, like I added these myself, you can add your own folders, but it always looks to your user profile. Let me grab my Windows Explorer here, and I'm going to navigate to my user profile folder. And in here, you'll see the two add-ins. One of them I loaded up this morning, and one of them I just created. When I look in here, I can see the add-in file. This is part of the compile process. And let's see, what am I going to do here? I'm going to remove my add-in. I'm just going to delete it from this well-known folder. And then let me start up Pro again. So this time when Pro starts, it's looking in that well-known folder, but I've deleted the add-in. Just one of them. So the add-in tab is still up here. The earlier custom identify tool is still there, but the other one that I created here just now is gone because I removed it from that folder. All right, let's come back to the regularly scheduled program here. So for deploying add-ins, they're just a single file. I was showing you here the user profile folder where the add-ins get loaded when you compile and run from Visual Studio. An add-in file contains modules, and controls. I just created a button, but you could see that, oh, I could make several buttons and several tools and gallery items and all of those other items. You can put all of those into one add-in. It's just a compressed file, and we're showing the add-in manager where you can, in the backstage area, you can manage the add-ins that are loaded. You could delete them from there, or as I did, I just went to the user profile folder for example purposes and deleted the file myself from the well-known folder. The add-in manager also has these extra folders. The extra folders are also examined when Pro starts up. It looks to these folders, and if it finds any add-ins underneath these folders, it's going to load them in. You could put an add-in out on a shared drive, and many people could point to that shared drive, and they'd all get the same add-in when they start Pro. You could put several add-ins out there, and they could load up for your users. The nice thing about add-in files is just the ease of sharing them with others. You could email it to somebody, they could double click on it. When they do that, it puts the file into that well-known folder. They could copy the file into the user profile or any of the other well-known folders that have been assigned to also. You don't have to be an administrator. There's no installation routine or setup. There's no registration with the component categories. And nothing shows up in add and remove programs. So they're really easy to share and use. Well, let's take a change of course here and look at solution configurations. A configuration, you might think of it as an add-in plus controlling how Pro starts up. So here you could make your own splash screen, you could do your own titling and icons, and you could do your own start page. Also, you get to control the ribbon area and the tabs that are going to show up in there. You could remove some tabs, you could add in new tabs, you could put your add-in in there with its tabs. You can also find out who the user is and what portal they're connecting to. You could find out what groups they belong to. So you could make really focused configurations for different projects. When somebody starts up Pro, it would automatically know based on their group membership how to open up Pro. What do you want to show them? What projects do you want to show them at the startup? What buttons and tools and tabs should be available to that type of user based on their group that they belong to? Well, let's dig in here then and look at configurations. I'm going to go to Visual Studio and get started again, and I'm going to create a project this time for configurations. So here I'm going to create a new project. Earlier I used the add-in template. Now I'm going to use the configuration template. And I'm going to go ahead on here and create the project. As the project gets created, you can see the supporting files. The DAML file has been created here with my metadata, and you can see the modules here that are going to get inserted. All right, there's also an extra folder, the UI folder. This folder contains the startup information. So as your user gets started, as Pro gets started, you control the splash screen. You control the start page. And you can add your own your own extra information to the About page. So these are 3 areas where you can customize the startup experience. Besides that, you could use the configuration manager. I'm going to talk about this one a little bit later, but this is where you would go to control which tabs appear and find out who the user is. When we look at something like the About page, it's just a WPF control. You can see it's a user control down here. It has its basic XAML to get going. And we give you a little bit here to get going. I'm going to make some changes though. Instead of just the name of my project, I'm going to put something else in here for the name of the, let's see, hold on here. Let me paste this in. It's hard to talk and type and copy and paste at the same time. So here I'm putting in just a little bit different text. And I'm going to style the text here just so it has a slightly different color and font here. Whoops, what did I just do? Oh, I copied in too much. Oh, see, I told you, talking and typing. All right, hold on here. Let me paste in. I'm gonna move this up over here. There we go. And get my XAML just right here. Okay, so you can see the titling has changed up here. This is going to be in the About page. And I might rearrange some of these here and make it look just the way I want. That looks pretty good. Then I'm going to go to the splash screen. Oh, splash screen, which we give you just a little bit here to get started, but you might use the toolbox over here on the left side to add your own WPF controls in here. I'm going to just do a minor change here to the way this looks, just to match up with my earlier change on the About page. All right, let me grab a little bit here, copy, and I'm going to paste this in here. I've got my text, I've got my color. I'm going to just add that in over here. Okay, and I'm going to change the border a little bit with its color and thickness. So I'm going to move that up here into the border area and replace the line that was there, line color. All right, I think I'm good now. This is how our splash screen is going to look. So I've done a little bit of customization here of these user controls. The start page is there's a little bit more to the start page. So let me do a build here so we can see it. The start page is there to have your user open an existing project or, excuse me, either open an existing project or create a new project. Well, here we're focusing them on opening an existing project. Let's do a test run here and see what this looks like. All right, so as Pro gets started here, we have the project open up, or the start page open up, where I can select a project. Here I'm going to go ahead and pick a project. And as Pro gets going, I still have the add-in in here. And I can start using that add-in directly. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop here. What I wanted to do is also add in a button over here. So I'm going to, let me add in a button. I want the configuration to also deliver a new button. Okay. So I'm going to pick the ArcGIS templates here and new button. Whoops, new button. And I'm going to type in a name here for this button this time. Okay. All right, so I've got the button's click event. I'm going to leave this empty for now. But what I want to do is go to the DAML and control where that button shows up. So here I'm moving to the DAML associated with my configuration, and you can see here that the button control has gotten added in here to the DAML, and my button is going to appear in this group. I'm going to change the name of the group. And I'm going to call it Edit Tools. The other change I'm going to make is here. Usually your add-in is going to have a command in it. If it has a command, like here a button, it gets added to a special tab called the Add-in tab. That's just there for us developers. We don't really want our users to see a tab called Add-in. So I'm going to remove the Add-in tab, and then I'm going to come up here to the tabs area. And I'm going to uncomment the code here and define my own new tab. So here I'm going to give the tab a caption. Okay, I'm going to call it Rob's Edit Tools. How about just Rob's Edits? That seems good enough. And I'm going to change the ID for the tab. I'm just going to put a keyword in here. I'll use this keyword later on when I need to do some searching on this tab. All right, so now let me run this add-in again, or sorry, run this configuration again. As Pro starts up, we get the nice splash screen, and Pro is continuing to get going here. After the splash screen, the startup page appears, where my user can pick a project. And when Pro appears, remember how I did the add-in earlier that came in on the add-in tab? Well, for the add-in that I'm delivering here with this solution configuration, there's another tab called Rob's Edits. And on there is the Make Point button that I recently created, and it went into the Edit Tools group. All right, let me go ahead and stop there for a while. With add-ins, remember how the add-in file gets placed in the user profile location. With configurations, it's a little bit different. So let's again come on back out to Windows Explorer here, and let me grab my folder location here. Okay, and I'm going to copy that and just paste it in here. Configurations get placed in a different folder. Instead of the user profile, they're placed in the public profile. So here you can see I just created a configuration, number 12. It shows up in this folder. Well, when Pro starts up, it has to have a way to find these configurations out here. You can see I've got several different ones. Earlier, I ran this one here, config with map. It's one of the samples. Well, how do we make this happen? Well, the configurations, they either get placed into this well-known folder. You could copy them in there. Visual Studio puts them in there. If somebody emailed you a configuration, you could double-click on the file and it'll place the configuration here in this public profile location. However, how does it know to start it? I'm going to have to leave the demo here for a minute, or leave my PowerPoints, and take a look at my desktop. On my desktop, I have several different icons over here, some shortcuts. This is the way Pro determines which configuration to open up. You go to the shortcut, look at its properties, and normally you would see that the Pro shortcut starts up Pro, goes to the ArcGIS Pro EXE and starts it up. However, you can add a switch in here to look for configurations, a /config and a colon, and then you tell it which configuration to start up. This one starts up another one of our samples called config with Start Wizard. So when I start up this configuration, it has its own splash screen, it has its own startup page. One of the things I like about this sample is it has lots of startup pages for you to look at. So here's just the standard one, but then you could have other startup pages, ones that look very similar to Pro, and ones that have other items listed, like give your user a list of projects to open, or a list of templates to get started with, or a list of web maps, and more, and layers. And then you're probably wondering about how we did the counties. Well, you can look in the sample and find out how we did the counties here, so that your user can start a project just by clicking on the map and click features on the map. All right, let's come back over here to the presentation part and see if I've covered everything here so far and what's next. All right. I've given you just a brief overview of configurations and how to build them, and then how to get them started up, how to set them up. A configuration is a little bit more than an add-in. So it's a way to deliver add-ins, but it's also a way to customize the user's startup experience, where it's your splash screen and your start page with any kind of company branding that you'd like to include there, with your colors and your logos and things like that. But it also includes the configuration manager. The configuration manager, I like to say it's the central nervous system. It's really controlling all the aspects of how the configuration works. It's defined in the DAML, and then there's a C# file that comes along with it to write your code. It's in this file here in the class, or the configuration manager, that you control those start page and splash screen and the about page. You get to decide which ones you would like to control. There's these 5 main ones, and what you're going to do is override their methods, so that when Pro starts up, it finds your splash screen instead of the regular Pro splash screen. You can decide which of these you'd like to override. If you only want to do one of them, that's fine. Maybe you want a custom start page, but you're fine with all the other aspects of Pro. You just want your users to have your start page. Well, you just don't have to implement the others. Or if you're doing decision making, you could return null, and then it will just automatically go to the Pro start page, about page, so that you can keep the Pro behavior in some cases, but take it over when you need to. On the coding side, the overrides look something like this, where you override a method. So here we're overriding OnShowAboutPage. And within that method, we're doing the return here, but we're using our user control, the one in the UI folder. So here's the about page over here. When you customize the about page, you override the method and tell it, hey, use my about page instead of the one that Esri has out there. The OnShowStartPage is a little bit different. There's one level of complexity added in here, where yes, we do have the start page, and there's the corresponding user control defined with XAML for the start page. But with the start page, you'll have to have some decision making going on there and some code running behind the scenes. We follow the MVVM pattern, where we try to keep the UI definition separate from your code. So here we have the start page defined in the XAML, the user control, but then we have a C# file behind the scenes to have all of the code associated with the start page. How do you find out about more of these methods that you can override? So I mentioned a couple, like over here in the list. We've looked at these 3 here, but there are other methods that you can override. This is when you'd probably come on over to the API reference. I'm going to just pop open the API reference here, and let me bring it on over. And here we are at the Configuration Manager class, looking at its methods. 2 that I'm going to be highlighting: on application initialize. This is called while the application is initializing, and when it's safe to communicate with portal. So this is where you would write some code to find out, oh, hey, what portal are we connected to? What user is connecting in there? What group do they belong to? And then you could make some decisions based on that information gained from the portal. There's also the OnUpdate database. And this one controls the UI and those tabs. So you could find out what tabs are available. You could remove some tabs. You could leave some, or you could add in some tabs of your own. When Pro gets started, it needs to put together the user interface with all the tabs across the top here. The way that it does that, during the startup process, it's looking for extensions. It's looking for add-ins in your user profile or in some of the other folders that have been defined. Then it brings all of them together into one XML database. When Pro opens, it reads that database and then it knows what tabs to display. You can do an override in here. So, or sorry, yes, you could do an override in the configuration manager in the OnUpdate database method. This one gives you that XML database. So from there, you could decide, oh yeah, I want to get rid of all the tabs except the one that I want my user to see. I want to focus this user on a certain workflow, and I have a tab design that has just the buttons and tools and functions that they're going to need. And I could even put them in order, so as they work through, they start on the left and they work through, and this way it makes it real easy for that user to carry out their job. Since they don't need the other tabs, you can get rid of them, and then people don't go and look to the other tabs and do something that they shouldn't. They're just able to focus on their task at hand. So let's check this out. All right, I'm going to return back to my configuration that I created earlier with our make point button here. And I want to do a couple of things to it. The first thing I want to do is override the OnUpdate database. I'm going to grab a little bit of code here behind the scenes to do that. Okay, I'm going to copy the code here. In the project, I'm going to go to the configuration manager. And within the configuration manager, I can see the overrides that are already there. I'm going to return a different text here for the title, the application name. But then I'm going to paste in my code here to override OnUpdate database. All right, I got to do a little resolving here. Oops, let me get over here to the X document and resolve it. Everything should clear up after that. In my code here, I'm getting all the tabs. And I'm going to put those tabs together in a hash set. So I'm collecting up all the tabs. I've got a looping routine here that tests if the name of the tab is not Acme. I'm going to put it together in this set. Then I'm going to do a loop, and one at a time I'm going to delete every tab except the one that starts with Acme. That's why I added that keyword into the tab earlier. All right, so I'm overriding the OnUpdate database here. The next thing I want to do is gather that user information and then do something with it. So for now, I'm going to go to the button over here, so the make point button, and I'm going to go to its click event. Okay, and I'm going to do something here in the click event. So here I'm going to copy some code in. In the click event, I want to go to module 1 and get the username. Okay, let me resolve my message box over here. Okay, well, I don't have this defined yet. So I'm going to have to do two things. I'm going to have to create a variable out there, a property, to hold on to the username. And then I'm going to have to do something else to discover what the username is. So what I'm going to do then, I'm going to add some code here. So I'm going to go to module 1. And in module 1, I'm going to add a line of code in here so I can add this property. All right, so here's my username property. I want to be able to get and set that property. My message box gets the username property. So now I need to figure out how to set this username property. And this is where we go back to the configuration manager. And in the configuration manager, I'm going to override another method. So earlier I added the override for onUpdateDatabase. And now I'm going to override onApplicationInitializing. With this one, I know that it's safe to communicate with the portal. So now when I communicate with the portal, I'm going to use the portal manager over here. Oops, let me resolve that for the desktop core. All right, and then as I get the portal information, I'll be able to find out from the portal who's signed in. I could continue on here and have some more code to find out, well, what group do they belong to, or ask other questions from the portal as I continue on. All right, I'm going to go ahead and run here, and let's see what happens. Oh, I've got some kind of an error. What do I have here? Oh, I've already got on application initializing. This was stubbed out when I created the configuration. So here, I don't need this on application initializing because I overrode it down below. Okay, so let's start up again here and make sure I don't have another error coming up here. All right, so here we go with the splash screen. Defined earlier, the startup page comes up. And I open up the project. All the tabs are gone, except my edit, Rob's Edits tab with the Make Point button. My add-in from before is still coming along. It's part of the setup here. And then, yeah, Make Point finds out who the user is and gives me a little message box here. If I look in the upper right, I can see who's logged in over here, but now I've got a way to programmatically get to the portal, find out who the user is, and then react and have some code that reacts to that and sets my user up so that they have the buttons and tools they need to carry out this project. Oh, a couple of things I was going to show in the backstage area. Under options and customize the ribbon. If you've got a pretty smart user, they might know about this, where like here you can see the Rob's Edits tab is the only tab right now. They could find other tabs and add them back in. That might not be good if you're trying to get them to focus on one project and a workflow. So you can actually customize the ribbon. You can remove that choice. All you have to do is go to the configuration in the dabble area and add just an extra attribute here, block customize dialog, and set it equal to true. And when you do that, customize the ribbon just won't show up. So your user won't have that choice to, as you're trying to prepare everything to remove tabs, they won't be able to just add tabs back in again. They won't see that option at all. Well, just to review a little bit here, when I was modifying the ribbon, I did an override of the onUpdateDatabase method. In that method, I wrote a little bit of code to get all the tabs, find out which tabs started with a keyword, keep those tabs, but remove all the others. So put all the others in this hash set here and then remove them. And that way I've got a nice shortened or minimized user interface to help my users focus in on the work at hand. The other thing I did was override the on application initializing. In that method, you know that it's safe to call the portal. Some of the other methods, they're happening a little earlier. The initialization with portal hasn't been done yet. So we want to be in this method, and this is the earliest method then that we can use to start communicating with the portal. All right, well, we've gone through our creating an add-in, creating configurations, and I'm going to pass things over to Chris now to look at what's new and what's next and answer some of your questions.
All right, thanks, Rob. Wow, that was a great set of presentations and demos. It really brought out how developers can refine their solution configurations with the Configuration Manager class. That was great. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right, so let's take a look at what's new. So ArcGIS Pro 2.1 was released just 4 weeks ago on January 17th. And this is a very exciting release. It provides a lot of new API enhancements, which many user organizations have been asking for. First, we have the new Annotation API, which allows you to create and edit annotation features and their geometries. This is a great addition for organizations that need to perform detailed annotation editing and management tasks. Next, the expanded Layout API. This allows developers to build new layouts and layout elements and manage layout views and selections. Many organizations that dynamically create unique map layouts, such as alignment sheets, as well as map series, are going to find this as a solid foundation for that work. Next, the new Utility Network API provides access to the utility network functionality, which is new with Pro 2.1 and ArcGIS 10.6. The API is extensive, and it provides fine-grained access to the utility network to create custom utility network traces and tools. And finally, the Content API now provides a straightforward way to access and update project item metadata, as well as the ability to query Portal and ArcGIS Online for groups, folders, and content. And as with all our releases, the teams have developed new code, samples, and documentation to make it easy to learn and get started with the new functionality. Okay, so now let's take a look at the SDK work that the Pro teams are looking at in 2018. Most of this work will focus on more API enhancements. First, there are plans for a new metadata toolkit for fine-grained access to manage metadata. And next, editing API enhancements to support tools for editing annotation and managing data changes. And also geodatabase API enhancements for more control over enterprise geodatabase management tasks. There are also plans to expand on the 2.1 API work for annotation, layout, and utility network. And there will also be work on improving geometry performance, as well as providing more UI controls so that developers can create great-looking add-ins that are in sync with ArcGIS Pro styling. All right, so the Esri Developer Summit is coming up quickly. It's scheduled for March 6th through the 9th, Palm Springs, California. We're really excited about this year because we have a lot of great Pro SDK offerings. Here's what you're going to find at DEVSummit this year. So starting again, you're going to find a 2-day pre-summit hands-on training course, Introduction to Programming with the Pro SDK. This course really provides a comprehensive intro to the Pro SDK and is taught by instructors from Esri Training Services, Katie Dalton and Rob Burke. All right, Rob, we're looking forward to that. There will be 12 different technical sessions on Pro SDK concepts. We'll also have 4 different demo theater sessions, which are shorter and demo focused. And then new this year at DEVSummit, there's going to be a 5-hour getting started hands-on workshop scheduled on the Thursday. The workshop's going to provide attendees with a solid overview for getting started with lectures and exercises, and also an opportunity to learn some intermediate level skills. So Rob, you'll be teaching this one as well, which is great. Attendees are going to have a great experience and will learn a lot. And then finally, we're going to have the SDK team staffing the ArcGIS Pro area in the Esri Showcase all week. So stop by and meet the whole Pro team, ask your questions, and discuss what you have planned for your Pro customizations this year. Okay, and so to get further details on all the Pro SDK sessions during DEVSummit, go to the DEVSummit Agenda page and click on the search option, and then type in Pro SDK in quotes. And then you'll see this graphic, and then you'll also get the full listing of SDK offerings. So right at the top, you should see the list of the new hands-on getting started workshop offerings. Okay, so now a few words on GeoNet. So hopefully all of you attending today have been participating in the GeoNet community. I just wanted to let you know that we have a very active Pro SDK group, which we'd like to encourage you to join. In the group, you can collaborate with the community of developers and Esri staff, ask questions, and search on the knowledge base of questions and topics. It's also a great place to provide your feedback on the SDK. We're growing the SDK based on user needs and requirements, and so developer feedback, especially after you've tried some prototyping work, is very welcome and encouraged. Finally, a wrap-up mention of another great GeoNet resource, the ArcGIS Pro Roadmap. This is a blog post that was created by Rob Elkins and the Pro team last year and is updated with each release of ArcGIS Pro. It shows at a glance the new capabilities which are planned for ArcGIS Pro in the near, mid, and long term. And the post includes concise, one-line descriptions of each of the upcoming capabilities. It's a great way to keep updated on what's coming down the road. Okay, with that, I think it's time for us to wrap up and answer some questions that you've asked here. Amy, back to you.
Thank you, Chris. We're now going to begin answering the questions submitted during today's presentation. As a reminder, you can still submit questions through the questions pane in your attendee control panel. Our first question is, what is the recommended development process to convert ArcObjects tool, not add-in, developed with .NET to the new Pro SDK? Is there specific targeted help for this type of transition?
Yes, there is. We've got a new Pro Concepts document called Migrating to ArcGIS Pro, which you can find from the documentation page, which is on the GitHub wiki. So to access all of our documentation, you can go to pro.arcgis.com and then click on the SDK tab. And then from there, right at the top, you're going to find a number of quick start links. And on the far right is documentation. So that's going to take you to our documentation page on GitHub. And there you can search on migrating to ArcGIS Pro. And if you use those keywords, you should easily find right at the top the list of new documents that are available to help you get started developing with the Pro SDK. So this document really kind of provides you a nice overall view of some of the main migrating tasks. Most importantly, I'll just kind of step back on some of the main steps that we always encourage people to do. First, it's to really learn ArcGIS Pro very well. And we definitely recommend that you look at understanding what's new in Pro, reimagining your ArcMap customizations. We would like you to really take advantage of all the new features in Pro so that you can really be creating something that's new, not just migrating wholesale those customizations you've done in ArcMap over the years, but really take a look at what's available. There's so much that's new in Pro. And then learn the Pro SDK. Start with the Pro concepts and Pro guide documents. Start with the dev labs and try out many of the community samples that are available. We've got over 110 full Visual Studio solutions that you can take advantage of. And then once you're there with the Pro SDK, start developing a small prototype add-in. Look at migrating some of your functionality over to Pro. And you leverage all of the different API documents to help you learn how you can actually implement that the best that you can. And we really encourage you, as you're working and getting started with the process, to, again, take a look at that GeoNet Pro SDK group. As you have technical questions, feel free to ask those. Search on the knowledge base so you can see what other developers have been doing, how they've been working with some of the different customization and programming patterns, and really use that as a way to begin getting well-versed with the SDK. And I think you're going to find that making the migration is fairly straightforward. we've had really great feedback from longtime ArcObjects developers who've been working with the SDK over the past couple years and have been really having a really good experience with it. All right. Thanks,
Okay.
Amy.
Yeah. The next question is, what is the best strategy to migrate add-ins built for ArcMap with ArcObjects and .NET?
Okay. I think I just kind of covered that in that first question, but again, overall, this is the Pro SDK for .NET. This is probably a good opportunity to mention that with the Pro SDK, it's a new and modern SDK. We're encouraging everybody to really use the programming patterns which are new and modern with .NET. So we're talking WPF, Windows Presentation Foundation, asynchronous programming. Async programming is going to be new to a lot of ArcObjects developers moving to Pro. It's we think that the implementation in Pro is very good. The queue task, it makes it very easy and straightforward for folks to manage async programming and tasks. And we really think that using the model view model pattern is going to be a really nice way to overall manage your add-ins and configurations. We've got a lot of great documentation and definitely encourage you to start with the Framework Pro Concepts document. It's really your foundational document to really understand async programming and some of those patterns I just mentioned.
Okay, our next question is, what is a DAML?
So the DAML, that's the desktop application markup language, and that is essentially that configuration file, which you saw Rob working with quite a bit. It essentially controls the user interface of Pro, and the config.daml is read as every installed add-in and configuration as Pro starts, and that's what's going to be configuring how your different controls and tabs and other new customizations that you've built are rendered in the Pro UI. So it's kind of like a little bit of a separation here for having a classic sort of desktop sort of UI separated from your overall code logic. And again, the add-in pattern, for those of you who have developed add-ins over the years with ArcMap and since 10.0, the add-in extensibility model has been made available. You're going to find this very straightforward as you make the jump over to Pro.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Does Pro need to be installed and licensed before you can install and use the SDK?
That's a great question. So you do not have to have Pro installed to install the Pro SDK. So there's two main methods to get the SDK. You can download it from My Esri, or you can download it from the Visual Studio Marketplace right within Visual Studio, and that's the recommended approach. So with that said, though, you won't have access to the Pro APIs until you install Pro and get it licensed. So that's definitely going to be an important thing to do as you get started. So definitely want to have Pro installed and licensed. And just a quick note on your add-ins. You know that you have the different levels of licensing with ArcGIS Pro. There's basic, standard, and advanced. And your customizations that you build are going to be in sync with those licensing levels. So as you get functionality that's available, with those licensing levels, that same functionality is exposed and available to you in the Pro SDK.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Chris and Rob, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar, Building ArcGIS Pro SDK Add-ins and Solution Configurations. If you have any other questions, please contact me using my email address in your follow-up email. Once you leave today's webinar, you will receive a survey on the presentation, and we would appreciate if you would complete that and provide your feedback. We will be providing a recording of this presentation, which will be available within 7 to 10 business days. Also, if your question did not get answered, we will be going back and answering those questions and then posting those in a blog post on GeoNet later on. And on behalf of Esri and our presenters, thank you today for joining us, and have a great Rest of your day,